like 30 years of therapy. My self-esteem has never been in better shape.
Great. So last week, you obtained a copy of you know whose 2005 federal tax return. Something many Americans have sort of been demanding, just any tax return. What was the first thing that went through your mind when you knew you were going, when you knew you had it?
This one?
Yeah.
I think I'm using this microphone. Is that right?
Oh, okay.
Rachel travels with her own mic.
I travel.
It's like Miranda Lambert.
It's just to make me look important.
I guess this one's not working.
Oh, that's fine. Well, so honestly, the first thing I thought when we got this call, this reporter had obtained what he thought were these tax returns, my first thought was, don't get pranked. Like, could this be a forgery? Could this be some sort of, you know, like, make sure this stuff is real. Because obviously there's such appetite to learn about his tax returns. He's the only president in 40 years, so we don't have his financial information. And simultaneously with that, we've got this increasing knowledge about his weird overseas ties in terms of people on his campaign. So there's all this appetite for it. It's the perfect environment to prank somebody. And so I thought, let's make sure this is right. We gave a tentative yes. We will break it if we can prove that it is real. And then we spent 36 hours trying to get the White House to verify it was real. And then they finally did, and then we went to air.
Well, some speculate that Trump leaked those himself to distract from other negative things, and it wasn't that damning, the results. Like, so do you think that could have come from Trump?
It totally could have come from Trump, which is like such a bizarre human drama at the center of this. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that matters is that document real? That's the story. Because what we need to know is whether the president is conflicted, whether he's making policy decisions, whether he's making personnel decisions that aren't just for the good of the country, that might be benefiting him or benefiting somebody he owes money to. That's why we need to see that stuff.
Well, we know he gave them to you because otherwise there would be more pages with real information on them. There's only 2 pages.
Well, what is interesting is that Donald himself tweeted that releasing the taxes was fake news, and his son Donald Jr. tweeted this: "Thank you, Rachel Maddow, for proving to your Trump-hating followers how successful at real Donald Trump is, and that he paid $40 million in taxes, #taxes." So did this actually end up making him look good and perhaps justify his supporters who call this and, you know, everything else a witch hunt?
My favorite thing about those 2 things together is like, okay, it's an amazing release of his tax information that shows that he's super rich and paid a ton of money in taxes. It's real and great. Also, it's fake, and it's illegal for you to publish them. Like, I'm happy to absorb either one of those punishments from the family, but both of them, it's either fake or it's real, and you guys have to pick one. And use that to attack me.
Hasn't he been saying for the past, I don't know how many years, we know he's around, that he's a billionaire? That's not, that's 150 million, that's far.
Well, that was his income that year. So
but also that money, that tax that he paid was because he sold that building or whatever it was to China. That's Chinese money, supposedly. Now, I did not do his tax return, so I do not know. But, I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff.
We know very, very little about his finances. I think one of the things that seems important to me about getting that little piece of it is that, A, it proves that you can release some of his tax information without the world ending. He's had weird excuses for not releasing his taxes.
Well, he's
under audit. Well, every president has been under audit
So what do you think
since
he's afraid
Nixon,
of?
and they've all released their tax returns.
So what's he afraid of, Rachel?
I don't know. So why doesn't he release it?
Yeah.
Because the explanation for why he won't doesn't make sense. We've now seen with me releasing these 2 pages that you can release it and it's not even necessarily bad news. Why are you so afraid?
Because he didn't give you the pages that really would tell you anything, and the tax returns that you would get would indict him with the influence in Russia.
Well,
that's why.
We'll see.
There's no other reason.
The thing is that if the White House continues to insist that there's nothing in the tax returns that's going to make him look bad at all, and there's nothing to this Russia story, well, prove it. Show it.
Rachel, why he doesn't do it.
It's true. I want to get to the rollout a little bit because you took a lot of heat. I was watching social media, and some gave you a lot of heat that you drew it out. In other words, that you initially teased the segment, and then they had to wait a long time, and then by the time it had hit, other news outlets were potentially on it. So what do you say to that, to people who felt that the rollout didn't help your show or maybe wasn't handled correctly?
Well, for me, the most important thing here, as I said, was figuring out that this document was real. And then in terms of breaking the news, I felt like my responsibility was to show the information information, to be transparent about where we got it from, to talk about some of these issues in terms of the sourcing issues.
Yeah.
We honestly have no idea where it came from. It very well might have come from the president himself.
Right.
But the overall issue being the importance of the president releasing his tax returns, why it's so unusual that he hasn't, why therefore even getting this little piece of information is a big deal.
Can I ask
So
a
for me,
different
that's
question?
what I felt like I had to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did it. And you like me or don't, I did it right as far as I'm concerned. So.
Why is this particular year important?
2005?
Why would that be the one if
they were
to? Why
If they
would-
released it
yeah.
themselves to make themselves look good?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know. We have to see the other years in order to know.
Right.
But there are some interesting things about 2005 that make it potentially a unique year in his taxes. Number one, that was his first joint filing with Melania. They had never filed together before. She was not
Maybe
yet.
she made all the money. That jewelry's fabulous.
She was not yet a citizen at that point. She underwent her citizenship interview the following year, and one of the things you have.
What year was that?
2006 is when she became a citizen. So 2005 is when they filed this tax return. And if you go to U.S. Customs and Immigration, they tell you when you're coming in for your citizenship interview, make sure you bring all your tax returns. So it was very important to them, having just become a married couple, that those tax returns for 2005 look right? Because it's part of her citizenship application at that point. So that's one thing. There's also the other interesting thing going on in the president's life at that point is that somebody had published a biography that year that said he wasn't a billionaire at all. He didn't have nearly that much money. It's all a joke. And Trump was enraged by that. He filed a $2 billion lawsuit against the author of this book against him. And so he might have been feeling a little sensitive about showing that he had a lot of income.
But he proved that he wasn't a billionaire by showing the tax.
Yeah.
He made $150 million on his
Yeah,
tax,
he didn't
but
have
it doesn't mean
more.
he didn't
Right.
have more
Yeah.
sitting in the bank. We have no idea what he's worth.
2006.
2006. I feel like I've piqued your interest.
Well, you have because when we were asking the questions, when did citizenship happen? How quickly did it happen? So
It happened after the
It
marriage.
happened after the marriage.
She was a green card holder. She was legally allowed to work here and make income. She was paying taxes. They filed jointly. It's all, there's no reason to be, as far as I can see, we've seen no evidence of anything that looks suspicious in that regard. But if you are wondering why 2005 might be a cherry-picked year that looked particularly shiny for them, then that's circumstantial evidence.
I'll just ask you. We're going to go and come right back with more with Rachel Maddow. Hey, we're back with Rachel Maddow. So James Comey told us earlier this week that the FBI is investigating Russia's involvement in the election. Ooh! And this morning, we're learning that Paul Manafort, to a surprise, Trump's former campaign manager, worked for Russia, for a Russian billionaire to help Putin.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Well, you
Tell us why this is a big deal.
So this broke this morning, just around 9 o'clock Eastern. The AP broke this story. And the funny thing that's happening, you can watch the White House freaking out about it. They're like, Paul who? He played a very limited, we don't even have his number. He ran the campaign.
Yeah.
He got Donald Trump the Republican presidential nomination. And there's always been this weird question, well, where did this guy come from? Like, he's not like...
Russia.
He's not like a big mainstream player in Republican politics. How did he end up being the campaign manager? And now the more we find out about him, the more his links to Russia are a little scary, honestly. And what the AP reported this morning is that in 2006, he basically entered into a business relationship, a $10 million a year business relationship with one of the billionaires in Russia who's closest to Putin. And what he agreed to do was promote Putin's policies in the United States covertly, without registering as a foreign agent.
Yeah.
And he was doing that for $10 million a year secretly in this country.
Yes.
And then magically, somebody suggested him to Trump as a good campaign manager.
Which is, and he was his campaign manager through the RNC, right? Through the...
Eventually, he got fired because of his ties to Russia.
Follow the money. Follow the money.
So the same thing that got him in kicked him out.
Well, yeah, it got a little... Now for them to be saying, oh, he played a very minor role in the campaign.
Yeah.
He was only there
He
for a
was
minute.
barely here, people.
Exactly. We can't even spell Paul. So
That might be too Rachel. Too close to home.
No, so we'll see. There remains some interesting threads to pull here. The FBI has a counterintelligence investigation open into the president's campaign.
Do you trust Comey, by the way?
We don't have the luxury to trust him or not. He's the only FBI director we've got.
Yeah.
Well, I said yesterday that I thought they needed an independent investigator here because Comey, when he was investigating Hillary's emails last summer, that was the big brouhaha. At the same time, we now know he was investigating the Russian connections to Trump, and yet we never heard about that. I don't trust him. Do you?
It is weird to look back at the campaign and know that the FBI had a counterintelligence investigation into one of the campaigns for 4 months.
Yeah.
That they didn't mention until and didn't mention for months after America voted on it.
It's really outrageous.
And so, I mean, the calls for special prosecutor are resounding and getting louder, in part because of the FBI, but in part because the congressional investigations are led by 2 guys who were part of the Trump campaign.
Yes.
So if the investigation is into the Trump
It's
campaign,
so partisan
Nunes
that it
was
can't be
on the campaign as a transition official. Burr was also on the campaign, who's leading the Senate investigation.
talking about that.
This is what I said. They actually have to come here to get some impartial people. they need to, this is how far away they have to get to find someone impartially to do the right work that we would be telling people to do if we were doing this with another country. We would be telling them exactly what to do. But we're not doing it. Go ahead, Jen.
Alternate reality.
Yesterday, we had Gorsuch, the Supreme Court nominee, go in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and you have Chuck Schumer saying that essentially he shouldn't be confirmed right now because you have Donald Trump under FBI investigation. Does that argument hold? I have a sense that Republicans would make that same argument if the shoe were on the other foot and Hillary Clinton were in there under FBI investigation.
Yeah, I mean, you think the elephant in the room here and the Gorsuch nomination is that President Obama nominated Merrick Garland for that seat
There you
while
go.
he still had a year in office.
Right.
And the Republican objection to even meeting with him, let alone holding a hearing, was President Obama's only going to be president for another year. And so we've invented a new rule, which means you then don't get to appoint a Supreme Court justice. The Democrats' conceivable objection to Gorsuch is, listen, nothing about you personally, sir, but our FBI is now investigating not just like whether you evaded taxes or whether you're corrupt in some personal way, whether or not you and your campaign colluded with a foreign power in their attack on the United States.
Right.
And in that environment, it's weird to let that person make a lifelong appointment to the
I
Supreme Court.
like Gorsuch. I'm a right-wing girl, and I think that's a legitimate argument to be made that Joy made today. That I mean, I don't understand how you can justify having this investigation go on with the commander-in-chief and at the same time have this nominee go through. I think it's a legitimate argument, and if Democrats are smart, I think they should make it.
Could be an illegitimate
That's it.
president.
It could be, but you know, when you are faced with a brick wall that says we're making the decisions, you got to pee louder, scream louder, you got to fight it. But I don't see
There's an
people
argument
fighting.
to be made that the Democrats should get up out of that hearing room and say, you know what, we're not doing this.
Right.
You go. You have your votes if you want. We're filibustering
Yes.
it. We're done. You can do this.
Yes.
We're not.
Yes.
A lot of people would support
Yes. That's what needs. People need to get up. They just need to get up. People need to do something, you know. And
Sometimes
it's
you
not
just
just
have
stuff. You got to get up.
Sometimes you just got to walk out, right?
Well, yeah. You know what? We look. Come back anytime. Come back and play with us. We love that. Rachel Maddow, we love you. You can check out Rachel Maddow's show weeknights. Check your local listings for times, and if we're lucky, we'll be right back.